Hello everyone, Rurikhan here coming at you with some new Bloodborne information. I know that you guys have been waiting for this video for quite some time, so I do have to apologize for that. It's just I've been really ridiculously busy, and I'm going to do an update video soon to let you guys know of everything that's been going down over the past week, obviously at Gamescom with the trip vlog and all that. But this video is going to be about Bloodborne and all the new stuff that I learned while I was at Gamescom. So for starters, the two things that I did in regards to Bloodborne while I was there is I played it for like 5 minutes and they kicked me out. I barely got anything out of my play session, to be completely honest. The only thing I really did get out of it was I got an idea of the controls, which allowed me to kind of figure out how critical hits are going to be made. So that is definitely going to be coming on later in the video. And then I had a 1 hour closed session with some of the developers of the title, where they essentially gave us a presentation of the stuff that they have been working on. Before you guys ask, no, Miyazaki was not there. I'm going to assume that he's back in Japan at the From Software Studios working on the title. The presentation was made by people from the Sony Japan studio. So I know that something that is going to be in a lot of people's minds is going to be the story, and let me just tell you up front that I did not focus that much in figuring out the story and how everything is going to work in terms of the story. I focused mostly on gameplay aspects because obviously that is the kind of things that I am more experienced with. I mean, story and lore is usually for people like VaatiVidya and Epic Namebro. They're the ones who kind of tend to focus on that aspect a little bit more, I would feel. So, having said that though, I can tell you that the storytelling mechanics are going to be similar to the Souls series, so you can expect that same storytelling through maybe some item descriptions, stuff like that, you know, actually figuring out what is going on in the game, because there is a big theme in this on this title about the exploration of the unknown, and that is kind of tied in with the whole storytelling mechanics that we've seen in previous Souls titles. So yes, players will be able to take different things from the story and have different interpretations of the story. That is not only the way that they are planning on doing it, that is also essentially intended, and that is obviously the way that Souls fans usually tend to prefer the way their story is told. It is never going to be spoon-fed to you via narrative or whatever. You're going to have to essentially figure everything out for yourself, which obviously, like I said, is the way that I personally prefer it, and is the way that I've heard a lot of people prefer that to be. So the next concern is probably going to be difficulty. How hard was it? Well, it didn't really feel particularly hard when I played it on the show floor. It felt pretty much in line with what we've come to expect from previous Souls titles. Now, I do understand that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come out of the show floor and they're going to be saying, oh my god, it was so easy. It was a lot easier than Dark Souls. It was a lot easier than Demon Souls. And this is to be expected. And maybe a lot of people don't know this yet, but at that closed session, we were told that the show floor demo was intentionally a lot easier than the final product is going to be. So you can't really make any conclusions in terms of difficulty from what people's gameplay experience was on the show floor, because everything on that demo was tweaked to allow the users to be able to play for a little while longer without dying. And you guys might be wondering, why exactly did they choose to do it that way? And I can tell you that the queues for people that wanted to play Bloodborne were just completely insane and out of control. Like, I saw that queue several times, and a lot of times it was even queued up in different ways, performing S's all over the place. It was just insane. Like, I'm going to wager that the waiting time on that queue was probably an average of 5 hours all along, all throughout the show. So yeah, I mean, if you take into consideration that some people are going to wait 5 hours to play a game, they obviously don't want to play a game where they're going to die 3 times, stare at a loading screen for a while, and then get kicked out of that gameplay session, which is kind of why I feel that they did things the way they did, to kind of prevent people from being frustrated from having to sit in queue for so long and then not really getting a lot of experience out of it. So just bear that in mind when you listen to people who've had hands-on experience on the show floor. The demo was intentionally a lot easier than the final product is going to be. Now, something that they stated during the presentation is that they have no intentions of making the game harder than Demon's Souls. I mean, a lot of the times that they would compare things to previous titles, they would be comparing it to Demon's Souls, because remember, like I said, the presentation was being made by people from Sony Japan Studios who were not directly involved in Dark Souls or Dark Souls 2. So the difficulty that I'm going to be talking about is going to be in comparison with Demon's Souls. So they said that they didn't want it to make it any harder than Demon's Souls. And the reasoning why they didn't want to make it any harder is because they feel they've struck a balance, a very carefully crafted balance in between the challenge that you get while you're playing Demon's Souls and the sense of achievement and reward that you get when you overcome that challenge. It is never to the point where it gets too much frustrating. I'm sure that this point is going, some people are going to say, oh, that's arguable, but we don't really care about those people, so that's fine. But essentially what I'm getting at is that it never really got to the point where it was too frustrating, and it still kept like feeling very rewarding when you did overcome those challenges. So they really don't want to mess too much with the difficulty level as to kind of avoid damaging that balance that they've gotten of challenge and reward. Now, when it comes to concerns of the game being appealing for a wider audience, that is definitely something that they want. They want the game to appeal to a wider audience. And let's be completely honest here. What game developer does not want their game to be played by a larger number of people? Everybody wants that. That's just a fact of life. However, they also understand that they have a core audience that is expecting that core experience that is going to be challenging and that it is going to be just I don't want to say hard, because I've never really said that Dark Souls games were hard. The Souls games, I keep saying Dark Souls. I never really said that the Souls games were hard. I've always just said they are challenging, and they want to keep it challenging. They want to keep that core experience because they know who their main audience is. They know who are the people that actually play their games and the way that we enjoy playing them. So they're not willing to sacrifice that core experience just to get a wider appeal on that title, and that was really good to hear, because obviously whenever there's an iteration of Dark Souls, people immediately just jump their shit and like, oh my god, it's like it's gonna be easy and casual and it's gonna suck and blah 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 blah. So that is definitely not going to be the case for Bloodborne, assuming that they stick to their word and what they've said during the presentation. They want to essentially build up on that sense of achievement that you get from Demon's Souls, from when like you defeat a boss or something like that after having struggled on it for a while. You get that really sense of achievement and reward. They want to build on that. They want to build on that as much as they possibly can. And they don't want to over-focus on punishing players, which I've never really felt that they were punishing players that much. I mean, the game is challenging, and you need to pay. The previous Souls games were challenging, and you need to pay attention to what you're doing, but it's not like the game is just going to kill you outright for no reason. Well, there is that Seath fight in Dark Souls. But, yeah, they don't want to over-focus on punishing the players. However, they also stated they don't want to punish the players any less than they were already doing on the Souls series. So essentially, they're trying to maintain a status quo when it comes to difficulty, which, to be completely honest, I think is the best way to go about it, because the Souls games don't really need to be harder, and they don't really need to be easier either. At least that is my personal opinion. Something that they also mentioned in regards to that whole wider audience thing is that they feel that maybe the new online mode might capture a wider audience. However, they didn't really go into too many details in regards to that new online mode, so there's not a whole lot I can really say about that. So now let's talk a little bit about the new gameplay mechanics, and we're going to be starting by talking about the regain system, which I believe probably a lot of people have been talking about the regain system already. It was one of the big things that kind of came out of Gamescom 2014 was the regain system. So what is the regain system about? Essentially, whenever you take damage in Bloodborne, you're not going to immediately lose your health. Instead, if you think of like fighter games where sometimes you will take a couple of punches and kicks and whatnot, and your health bar will go to red, and then it will slowly start filling back up. It's not going to fill back up all the way, but it's going to fill up a section of it. the idea of the regain system is something along those lines, but not necessarily like in a fighter game, obviously. So what happens is when you get hit, the percentage of health that you would lose is going to turn to a different color. Like in the demo that they were showing us, it would go from red to yellow. And for a short period of time, you will, if you strike an enemy, it doesn't have to be the same enemy that attacked you, it can be any enemy at all. If you strike an enemy in a short period of time after getting hit, you will regain some of that health. So if you do enough hits on an enemy after you taking a swing, you will gain some of your health back, almost like a life leech mechanic. And I already know that a lot of you guys are going to say, oh my god, then it's going to be just like swing wildly and just you're going to be fine. Trust me, it's not going to work like that. From my gameplay experience, I can definitely tell you that just hacking away blindly is not going to save you regardless of what you do, because essentially the enemies can combo you and stun lock you. So it is still going to be that same tactical combat. It is not going to go the hack and slash route. Trust me on this. I played the game. I saw what they did on the presentation. On the presentation, they showed a lot of videos that I don't think anyone else has seen that showcase these mechanics, the regain mechanic, all this stuff. It is not going to boil down to a hack and slash from the stuff that I've seen so far. So this regain system is obviously reinforcing the whole vibe that people have been talking about Bloodborne, that it's going to be it is going to be a lot more active and a lot more offensive than what we've previously seen in the Soul series. Because let's face it, in the Soul series, you could basically, a lot of the times, just put up your shield, and after you're blocking everything with your shield, you can counterattack your enemies whenever they have an opening. Now, they haven't mentioned anything in specific about shields, so I still don't know if shields are going to be present or not. Maybe it has been announced while I was at Gamescom, and I missed that particular piece of information. But during the presentation that I attended, they didn't mention anything about shields. The setups that you got to play on the show floor were with the Soul Cleaver, which is the name of that weapon that looks like a bone saw or something that you can then extend. That's what they said that the name of that weapon was, the Soul Cleaver. So the stuff that you could play at the show floor was Soul Cleaver plus shotgun and an axe plus shotgun. An axe which could also be extended to become like a two-weapon. It almost looked like a polyarm, so to speak, but we'll go into more details about the transforming weapons and the such a little bit later on in the video. Right now, I still want to focus on the whole regain system. So, like I said, this system is going to support a more active combat where you're constantly going to be having to decide, okay, I took a swing. I took damage, so I need to decide, am I going to counterattack this enemy and try to get some of my health back, or do I want to back off and like just heal and then go back in again and attack him? But you're never going to be in a situation where, I don't think at least, you're never going to be in a situation where you're just like, oh, I'm just going to block everything for a while and just then I'll just counter him. I don't think that is going to be the case. Also, a little bit of trivia, something that they mentioned is that they said that Miyazaki didn't really see the HP bar as your health for Bloodborne. He said he saw that HP bar kind of like as your character's will to go on, to persevere in combat. And the reasoning behind this is, if you think about a real life situation, right? Let's say there's two people fighting in a real life situation, and you happen to be one of them. So let's say your attacker strikes you. Your morale is going to be a little bit low because you just took like a jab to the face or a uppercut or whatever. You're like bleeding and you're going to be like a little bit demoralized. You're going to become a little bit desperate. However, if you then turn around and hit your attacker back and you punch him right in the face, you're gonna kind of like rally. You know, you're gonna get your emotions in check and you're gonna feel empowered again because you struck back. And that's kind of the same way that this system works. So if you strike back to your opponents, essentially you kind of gain your will to continue and persevere with the fight. If, however, you just constantly take a beating, just like in real life, you become desperate as someone is just beating on you constantly, and you just become desperate and you start losing your will to go on, and you essentially lose your morale. And that is the feeling that Miyazaki is trying to portray with this regain system. And I thought, when they said that in the presentation, I thought that's actually a really cool analogy. So now, as I said, we would be talking about the transforming weapons. Let's do just that. So you guys might be wondering, what exactly is up with the transforming weapons? What is the reasoning behind the transforming weapons, and essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to add some more variety and versatility to combat. I mean, I myself, if you guys remember when I play a Dark Souls build for too long, you will see that in a lot of builds I changed my weapons. Like I seem to remember in the Miyazaki tribute build, for instance, I played a long time with the Baldur's Side Sword, and then I think that at a certain point I switched it up and I played with the Scythe for a little bit, and the reasoning for that is just it's cool playing with a different weapon every now and then. And I'm not sure if this system that they have in place is going to completely eliminate that. I'm pretty sure it's not, but it's not intended to. It's just intended to make your weapons feel more versatile. So for instance, you might not think of it like this, but when you have a weapon that extends, it actually gives you access to 3 different movesets on the same weapon. So for instance, let's take a look at the Soul Cleaver, right? Soul Cleaver is that weapon that has been shown in all the trailers and everything, which is essentially like a stick, then it's got like the blade, and then it extends and it becomes like this big stick with the blade. You guys know what it's like. You guys probably seen the trailer, so I don't need to tell you about that. So the thing is, that particular weapon has a moveset which is like for close quarters in tight spaces. Like if it's regular, if it's not extended, like in regular mode, you have a moveset. And then once you extend it, you have a different moveset that is going to be wider, is going to have better reach, all of that stuff. And then the third moveset is when you extend it in the middle of a combo, which actually also works as a guard break for the Soul Cleaver specifically. So, I mean, if you take into consideration that you have all these different variation of moves in one same weapon, you might not be bored of that same weapon as fast as I was, like, for instance, getting bored of the Baldur's Side Sword and just wanted to switch it up to Scythe or whatever. That is the conclusion that I personally take out of it, and that is also essentially what they said. They essentially said, like, we wanted people to have a more diverse movesets with these weapons so that you could, like, do different things with them. And like I said, one of the very important things with the Soul Cleaver is that guard break demands that you extend your weapon in the middle of an attack. And that actually worked pretty okay. I wouldn't say that it felt particularly smooth or anything to get a guard break. I'm not exactly sure if there is a specific way to guard break at this point apart from that because the game is still very early alpha stages, whatever. And this is just information that I've also gotten, at least some of this information was also just from looking at the controller layout that I saw while I was playing it on the show floor. But anyways, let's talk about these extendable weapons. So you've got the Soul Cleaver, which is going to transform into the extended version of the Soul Cleaver, and transforming it midway is going to give you a guard break. Another weapon that they've shown was an anti-beast axe. Now this was a slightly slower weapon, and it can be just a short axe or it can become a long two-handed axe. It almost looked like a polyarm, and it had charged attacks. Now I believe that all weapons are going to have charged attacks. I didn't really see charged attacks on the Soul Cleaver. I probably wasn't paying that much attention to it because I'm pretty sure that Soul Cleaver has charged attacks as well. But the anti-beast axe, I don't have a lot of details on it. They just showed it. You can switch it up. You can also switch it up mid-combo. I believe it might also do a guard break. Not 100% sure. But yeah, they showed Soul Cleaver, anti-beast axe, and then they showed another weapon, which I didn't catch the name, but I just called it a pneumatic stake poker. And what exactly do I mean by this? It's essentially like a weapon that you put on your fist. Like, think Assassin's Creed Hidden Blade, except instead of being from beneath your wrists, it's actually going to come from the top portion of your wrist, and it's going to be like this huge metal stake that you can essentially charge this up, and it's got pneumatic action. You can stab someone, and then like the stake will come off, and it'll be a thrusting attack. And when they showed that particular weapon, I thought it looked friggin' amazing. Now, they said that it takes time to prep up, so it takes time for you to, like, load it up for a thrusting attack. So it's kind of one of those things of risk-reward type deals that is like you want to do a really strong attack, you have to take time, prep up your weapon, and then you have to really know the distance that thing is going to hit so that you don't just whiff an attack, because it's going to cost you a lot of time to prep up that attack again. And they say that this is a weapon that they think is going to be used by more advanced players. And it also had a moveset that you could use it kind of like as a slashing weapon. But obviously the main focus of it was charging up those thrusting attacks. And it looked really cool when I saw it in the video. I was almost like, man, why don't you give me that video so that I can put that online? And people are going to go freaking insane for that weapon. It looked really, really cool. That's all I can really say about that weapon. And these were the stuff that they showed us in terms of transforming weapons. So something I mentioned just now while we were talking about transforming weapons were charged attacks. So I want to elaborate a little bit more on charged attacks and critical hits. So this particular part still confuses me a little, and I'm not 100% sure that this is how, the way that I'm going to say is how it works, because, I mean, you guys have to bear with me. I probably saw over 30 titles or something like that while I was at Gamescom, both in terms of presentations and interviews. I was not at Gamescom exclusively for Bloodborne, so I had to focus on other things as well. So just bear that in mind when I say I'm not entirely sure if this is the way it works, but this is what I got out of it. So in Bloodborne, you're going to be able to do charged attacks with your weapons. It's a short charge. It's not a huge buildup, except probably for the pneumatic steak poker. I'm sorry. This is the name cracks even me up. The pneumatic steak poker, because it pokes people. But anyways, apart from that particular weapon, I didn't seem like the charged attacks were like a huge buildup or anything. It was kind of like your character would just like wind up an attack just for a couple of milliseconds, and then boom. It's not just a regular attack. It actually takes a while to charge up and then attack, but it's not too long, so to speak. Let me just, again, I need to constantly look at my notes. This is for the stuff they showed. At least I didn't see anything in terms of charged attacks for guns. I'm not sure if that is going to be a thing. I didn't really get to play it all that long, like I said, so I didn't test that particular aspect of it. So something that it seemed to me is that I talked about charge attacks and how charge attack works. Now I want to talk about the critical hits. It seemed to me that the traditional backstab simply does not exist anymore. You cannot go up behind an enemy, press R1, and just backstab him. At least I wasn't able to do it in my game session. I definitely tried it because I tried doing backstabs before looking at the controller layout, which obviously was a big mistake because then they kicked me out super fast. I barely got to play anything else. But the way that they want to do it now is you have to sneak up behind an enemy and perform the charge attack. And once you perform that charge attack, he's going to go into like a parried-like state. Like, imagine if you just parried someone, except he's probably with his back facing towards you. And I say this because what they said in the controller layout description is that you had to do the charge attack, and after you did the charge attack, you would then go up to them, press R1, and that was going to do a critical hit. So that seems like that is going to be how backstabs are going to work. So you have to sneak up on enemies, do a charging attack. They're going to, you know, maybe get down on their knees or something. It's going to be a staggered-like state, and then you're going to be able to perform your critical hit. And now in terms of parries, parry also seems to be gone. Instead of parrying, what you're going to be doing is, as the enemy is about to hit you, you have to shoot them with your shotgun, which in reality works pretty much like the parry, because the shotgun blast is the L2 button. So when someone's about to hit you, press L2 the same way that you would do if you were trying to parry someone, and they will again go into a parried state, and you will be able to perform a riposte-like attack. And that is the way that those attacks are going to work. The attack with the shotgun that I just told you guys about, that's kind of like the parry. They're calling it a counter shot. I wasn't really able to do any of these things when I was playing the game because, like I said, it was just too fast. But it definitely seems a lot more interesting than, constantly using backstabs, which is something that I am most definitely guilty of doing, simply because it's kind of easy to exploit that particular game mechanic of just going around your enemies and backstabbing them. So I don't think it's going to be as easy on Bloodborne to do that kind of stuff anymore. Though I could be wrong. This is one of those things that I'm not 100% sure on. So in terms of other mechanics that I wanted to talk about, I want to talk about the fact that there is a dedicated button for the healing item. I believe that VatiVidya has also mentioned this particular, actually VatiVidya mentioned a lot of the stuff I'm mentioning right now, on his video because he was home making videos while I was at Gamescom slaving away. How fair is that? Never mind. So there is a dedicated button for a healing item. And the reason why they did this is actually the main cause for me even mentioning it, because here's the thing: like in most Souls games, what they've come to conclude, I mean, in the study they did or something, what they've come to conclude is that a lot of players will usually default their consumables shortcut, which is essentially square. Most players would default that to always having a healing item present, because obviously you want to be able to heal up in a pinch. You take a couple of hits that you weren't anticipating, boom, you press square, you're good to go, right? That's the way that most players do it. I know that I definitely do it like that. And that kind of causes a lot of players to actually not use consumables. As a matter of fact, I've been criticized on multiple occasions for not using consumables. Like several times I will get poisoned and I will just chug potions through it because I don't have the patience to go into the item management and selecting the item that removes poison or whatever. So that's the conclusion that they got to. So what they want to do is they want to have a dedicated button for you to be able to heal, and that button is going to be triangle. And I know that you guys are going to be like, triangle? How are you going to like dual wield and do all these crazy things? Don't worry about it. That is going to be done using L1, because essentially you're not going to be blocking anymore, remember? So L1 is going to be the button that is going to be changing like the way that your weapons are going to the way that your weapons extend and whatnot. The transformation thing is done via L1. However, just a quick little note here, which I forgot to mention during the during the transforming weapons, which is you do not press L1 in the middle of a combo, in the middle of an attack, and extend your weapon that way. You have to press R2. Don't ask me why, but yeah, doing the strong attack while you're in the middle of a regular attack, that is the way that your weapon extends. But anyways, going back to the whole healing thing, the reason they did it is because they want players to use more consumable items without having to concern themselves as much with constantly having a healing item at the ready. And I feel that is a really good thing, because yeah, that is essentially one of the reasons why I don't tend to use as many consumables, is because look, the healing item is just there. I can have like 3-4 healing items and just like cycle through those, and any threat that comes at me, be it poison, toxic, even bleeding, even though bleeding doesn't really do damage over time, but whatever, with any of those things that happens, I can just pop healing through it, and I don't really have to worry myself about having another item there, because in case I get hit, I'm not going to pop a anti-poison thing after I take a swing from a monster, if you get what I mean. So I thought that was pretty cool, so that they're essentially making it easier so that players can use the consumable items and not necessarily making the game easier. It's just one of those quality of life changes, but I thought it was really important because they want players to use more consumable items. It's probably something that they've noticed in their previous titles that a lot of players weren't doing. Like, I personally will go through Dark Souls 2 multiple times, and I might use, like, every playthrough, I might use like a combined total of 10, 12 consumables for one entire playthrough, and just have my inventory stacked with a bunch of stuff that I can use and end up never really using. So it's definitely nice that they're doing something about that. And while we're on the topic of items, they also mentioned that you're going to be able to do item combinations. I'm sure that you guys have read this through like a bazillion news websites, because I've definitely seen it all over the place already. But essentially, you can combo thrown items. The example that they gave was an oil vial followed by a Molotov cocktail. And let me just tell you how awesome it is that they have an item called a Molotov cocktail. Because instead of like, oh, this is the bomb thing, something, no, it's a Molotov cocktail. We're talking about freaking riot warfare here. It's just, I don't know. I just like the fact that there's Molotov cocktails. But yeah, that's just the basic combo, but it obviously lays the groundwork so that you will be able to combine multiple elements. Like, for instance, let's say you have some kind of a weapon that maybe does some kind of electric damage somehow, and you can probably throw a vial of water at someone and then combine lightning with water for additional damage, which you kind of already have some elements of that in Dark Souls 2, and I believe also in Dark Souls 1 as well, because if you throw like a lightning spear at a water surface, it actually will spread out and do AoE damage. So I thought that was pretty cool as well. Now, in terms of gun ammo, because I know that a lot of people are going to be concerned about gun ammo as well, there's not really a lot to say apart from the fact that I believe that they will probably want you to have multiple types of ammo, simply because there was a UI element dedicated to showing you how much ammo you had left, to show you how much ammo you had left, and it was like, how should I put this? The way that the UI was set up is you got your health bar, your stamina bar, and then to the left of the health and stamina bar, there's your healing item and how many of those you have left. And then there's like 2 squares. One of those squares is dedicated for your ammo, for your pistol, and the other square is dedicated to the consumable items, which is still used as the square button. So I'm assuming that you will be able to have multiple types of ammunition, and that you will somehow be able to switch that ammunition, and the ammunition was really scarce. Like, I think the most ammunition I had when I was playing was probably like 10 shots or something like that. So I don't think it's going to be kind of like, you know how in Dark Souls you get a bow and you can just get 999 arrows if you want to. I don't think that they want to do that for Bloodborne. I think they want you to struggle a little bit to get ammo, but again, this is just conjecture by my part. I'm not entirely sure if that is going to be the case or not. Now let's talk a little bit about level design. This is one of those things that I didn't see a whole lot of, but what I did see from the level design, both from what I've played and both from what they've shown at that presentation, the level design was a lot more in line with design of Demon Souls and Dark Souls, or the Dark Souls 2 DLC, because let's face it, Dark Souls 2, a lot of people criticize Dark Souls 2 for whatever reasons. I'm not here to knock down on Dark Souls 2 because I like Dark Souls 2, but the levels were, most of them at least, were in fact a lot more linear. You would kind of go from point A to point B with slight deviations, whereas in titles like Dark Souls, like let's take the example of Sense Fortress, you have a lot more of going around and then circling around to the same place, but at a different height, a lot more verticality, stuff like that, and that is definitely looking like that is going to be the direction that they're taking the level design of Bloodborne. They're taking that particular direction to the design of those levels. There is, like I said, lots of verticality. I'm just going through my notes again. The levels are kind of like intricate mazes. Like I said, reminded me a lot of the Dark Souls DLC level, which was a lot more intricate and a lot more. Vativides said it best when he said it's like a maze within a maze. And yeah, that looks really cool. Sound is going to play an even more important role in terms of enemy placement, because a lot of times you will not be able to instantly see your enemies. They will kind of surprise you, but the sound will allow you to kind of like prepare yourself for it. And I'm saying this because I saw a demo that they've shown at the presentation, which was the level that came after the level that was on the show floor, if that makes any sense. And that particular area looked a lot like the depths. Of course, different, how should I put this? It looked like you were on a sewer. It didn't look like the depths. It's just, think of it as from an ambience standpoint. It had the ambience of the depths. It didn't look necessarily like the depths, if that makes any sense. But you started on top of an area that architecturally, and I'm really not good with these words, architectural, ambience, and whatnot, but you started on top of an area that architecturally reminded me a lot of the Anor Londo ramparts, but the atmosphere, again, was in line with the depth. So you were running along these beams, and then you could jump onto some further beams that you have, beams. You could jump onto other beams, and eventually you could drop down quite a bit. This was like a really tall, in terms of vertical spacing, it was really tall, this level. It had a lot of verticality to it. I know that I've mentioned that already multiple times, but that's just kind of how that particular level felt. And then when they kind of like got to the bottom of it, there were a lot of rats in there. He fought a couple of rats, and after that, just like this giant pig boss appeared at the end and killed the character. And when I say giant pig, I don't mean like a humanoid-like pig. It was actually just like a real quadruped pig, just like charged through and just killed the player character. I thought that was pretty cool. I'm not sure if that boss is actually going to make it in the final game, or if it was just like a joke for the press that was there, but I thought it was pretty cool. So now, in terms of enemies, there are a couple of things to say about enemies. They want each encounter to be more unique, with the enemies having different strengths and weaknesses that you can exploit, as opposed to, like, you know how in previous Souls titles, like I've already mentioned, you can kind of like abuse the backstab mechanic on a lot of enemies, which kind of like gives you almost a formula, like, okay, I figured out how to do the backstab, so I'll be able to kill 80% of the enemies in the game or whatever. They want this to be different. They want each encounter to be kind of like almost like a life and death situation the first time that you encounter a monster, because I'm assuming by the time you know the strategy to killing them, it's not going to be that challenging anymore. But they showed an example where you had a bunch of old ladies, which I believe had knives, and they had some pretty decent reach, and they were very dangerous opponents because they could like get to you and slash you and whatnot. But in essence, they were still old ladies, so even just you rolling into them would like cause them to stagger and stuff. So that was the weakness of that particular enemy. You could roll into them and stagger them. And I think they're going to do different things with different enemies that will allow you to kind of like have different strategies for each enemy that you encounter, which is going to be a lot more interesting from a combat perspective than just going around, backstab, going around, backstab. You know, I know that I'm guilty of doing that as well. I do it a lot. I know. I'm just saying that this game design supposedly is going to support better things. And obviously, with this system in place, they want you to study each of the enemies and figure out their weaknesses as opposed to one-size-fits-all strategies. Now, one question that was actually given to me through the through that video that I made, and I asked you guys to give me questions and stuff, something that I hadn't really thought that much about because usually I play melee characters, was spellcasting. So obviously when I was there at that session and they opened it up for Q&A, I wasn't able to do a one-on-one interview with anyone, but when they opened it up for Q&A, I asked about spellcasting, and they said they didn't really have any details on spellcasting yet. And not only that, they said something I thought was really funny. They said that Miyazaki keeps secrets even from them, which I was just like, man, that just sounds so cool. I don't know. So in conclusion, after all this just big information dump that I just kind of laid on you, in conclusion, the game is still going to be a challenging and rewarding experience. At least it should be, if we are to believe everything that they've told me while I was there. The gameplay will most definitely be more active and offensive, using things like the regain system and the fact that you're probably not going to have shields. The gameplay will never go to the point of becoming a hack and slash title, which I've seen several people mention, oh, it's going to become a hack and slash and whatever. As a matter of fact, they even mentioned it at a presentation. They said, well, with this regain system, isn't this just going to become a hack and slash? And they were like, no. Don't even go there. That is not going to happen. The atmosphere of the game is going to be that of a horror title. As a matter of fact, a lot of people who might not be familiar with the Souls series or the pedigree of From Software, they might have a look at the trailers and think, oh, this is a horror game. And while they do give out that horror vibe, they instantly said the focus is definitely going to be the combat. They still want to scare you with smart enemy placement that can surprise you and stuff like that, but the emphasis of their development is going to be on the combat system and balancing that specific aspect of it. Transforming weapons look awesome and are going to make combat way more interesting, and the final conclusion is I personally can't wait for it. How about you guys? Let me know in the comment section what you think about all this information that I essentially just dumped on you. And yeah, just let me know what you guys think. Leave me your feedback, all that kinds of good stuff in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching for this long. We've been recording. Actually, it's not as long as I usually tend to make these analysis videos. I'm getting better at this. Thank you very much for watching the video up until this point, and I will see you guys in the next one.